just another Sunday morning. Robert, 68, widowed, getting ready to visit his daughter. But something's off today. Max, his loyal Labrador, is acting strange. Restless. Anxious. Determined. The car keys have vanished. Peter, have you seen my keys? What no one could imagine is why a dog would hide his owner's keys. Some might call it mischief. Others, disobedience. The truth? Beyond anyone's wildest guess. An unexplainable bond. An astonishing instinct. A race against time. Dog hides car keys, and the reason will touch your heart. Subscribe now and discover the outcome of this moving story. Robert woke up like any other Sunday morning, eager to visit his daughter Jennifer, who lived 2 hours away. At 68, these Sunday get-togethers had been the highlight of his week since becoming a widower 3 years ago. His faithful companion, Peter, a 9-year-old Labrador with caramel patches around his eyes, watched his owner's every move as he prepared to leave. The quiet house always felt emptier on days when the retired old professor left without his furry friend. "I'll be back before dark, buddy," Robert promised, stroking the dog's soft ears as Peter gazed back with those deep eyes that seemed to understand every word. After breakfast, Robert double-checked that he had everything: the birthday present for his grandson, the homemade apple pie that Jennifer loved so much, his phone and wallet. All that was missing were the car keys. He checked the usual hook by the door, nothing. He searched his coat pockets, the kitchen drawers, even under the sofa cushions, but the keys had disappeared. "Peter, have you seen my keys?" he asked absently, as if the dog could answer. That's when he noticed something strange. Peter, normally calm, seemed agitated, moving nervously from side to side, occasionally barking at the door and then turning back to stare at Robert with an almost human expression of concern. The search for the keys had already lasted 40 minutes when Robert began to get really frustrated. He called Jennifer to let her know he'd be late. "Maybe it's a sign you shouldn't come," she joked over the phone. "Dad, are you sure you're okay to drive? That dizzy spell last week." Robert cut her off, assuring her he was fine, just distracted. No sooner had he hung up than he saw Peter running into the room with something in his mouth. It was his keys. "Peter, you rascal. So you took them," he exclaimed, reaching out to take them, but to his surprise, the dog backed away, hiding the keys under the bed again. Peter's behavior was completely out of character. Robert bent down to try to reach the keys, feeling a sudden dizziness that made him lean against the wall. He took a deep breath, waiting for the sensation to pass. Lately, these episodes had been becoming more frequent, but he was reluctant to mention it to Jennifer. He didn't want his daughter to worry or, worse, suggest that he shouldn't live alone anymore. Robert finally managed to retrieve the keys, ignoring Peter's persistent barking, as the dog seemed almost desperate to prevent him from leaving. On his way to the garage, Robert felt Peter tugging at the hem of his pants with his teeth, something he had never done before. "What's gotten into you today, buddy?" he asked, intrigued but determined not to be any later. He got in the car and started the engine. Through the window, he saw Peter barking frantically in the yard, as if begging him not to leave. With a sigh, Robert turned off the engine and went back inside. Maybe he should take Peter this time, even though Jennifer was allergic and the dog usually stayed home during these visits. Upon re-entering, Robert felt a dizziness stronger than any he'd experienced before. The world spun violently, and before he could grab onto something, his legs gave out. He fell heavily onto the living room floor, unable to get up or call for help. In a moment of frightening clarity, he understood. He was having a stroke. Peter ran to his side, barking and licking his face as if trying to keep him conscious. Robert struggled to reach the phone on the table, but his arms wouldn't respond to commands. The last thing he saw before losing consciousness was Peter running toward the back door, where there was a small opening so he could come and go freely. Hours later, Robert woke up in a hospital bed with Jennifer holding his hand. "Dad, thank God," she exclaimed with tears in her eyes. Robert tried to speak, but the words came out slurred. Peter," he managed to ask. Jennifer smiled through her tears. "Peter saved your life, Dad. After you passed out, he ran to Mrs. Wilson's house. He barked so much at her door that she finally came out to see what was happening. Peter pulled her to your house, where she found you on the floor and called an ambulance. The doctor who entered the room completed the story. You had an ischemic stroke. If help had been delayed another 30 minutes, the consequences would have been irreversible, perhaps fatal. Your dog saved your life." 3 weeks later, Robert finally returned home after a period of recovery. His motor coordination wasn't perfect yet, and he knew he had a long road ahead with physical therapy. When Jennifer opened the door, Peter practically leaped onto Robert, licking his face with overflowing enthusiasm. The old professor carefully bent down, hugging his furry savior. "So that was it," he whispered, his voice choked with emotion. "You knew all along, didn't you? You knew something was wrong with me." Peter just tilted his head, with those wise, loving eyes that seemed to say, "I'll always take care of you." Robert now perfectly understood why Peter had hidden the car keys that Sunday. It wasn't mischief, but a desperate act of love that ended up saving his life. If you also believe in the power of a dog's love and loyalty, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe to the channel for more touching stories like this one. And I want to know, have you ever experienced or heard about a heroic story like Peter's? Share in the comments, we'd love to read your story.